In the United States, someone goes missing every 48 hours. Out of these cases, 21% never get solved. And when it comes to those that do, the truth can be more terrifying than fiction. Welcome back. I'm here. Today, we'll be taking a look at one such case that shocked the whole nation. Gabby Petito vanished during a cross-country trip. Her fiancé was the prime suspect, and he sure did have his reasons for being so secretive. Stick around until the end because you don't want to miss the twist in this one. The case began to receive nationwide attention on September after Gabby Petito's mom reported her missing. She hadn't heard from her daughter for almost a month, and when she went to check on her at her home in Northport, Florida, she noticed something strange. Gabby's fiancé, Brian Laundrie, was there, but Gabby was nowhere to be seen. A few days earlier, on September 1st, Gabby had called her mother, but since then, no one had heard from her. That wasn't like her. When Gabby traveled, she always kept in touch with her family. This time, however, no one knew where she was or what she was doing. All they got was silence. But why was Brian staying at the house if Gabby had been missing for over a week? According to him, he had no idea where she was. He told the police that he had last seen her on August, but that didn't add up. They had been traveling together in a Ford van, and all of a sudden she was gone without a trace. Brian said that she must have left him while he was asleep, but that would have been impossible unless he was driving while she was in the passenger seat, which would mean that he would have noticed if she had gotten out of the car. It seemed pretty obvious that something was off. The police checked the surveillance footage at the gas station and the store to see if Gabby had returned. But much to everyone's surprise, the answer was no. Not only that, but they had no clue how she could have left the area without anyone noticing. After all, they were living in a small town and most people knew each other. The police were stumped and the search revealed nothing. They had to wait until new evidence showed itself. But where would that even begin? On September 17th, 3 weeks after Gabby was first reported missing, the search took a dramatic turn. Two people were hiking in Wyoming's Grand Teton National Park when they spotted something that stopped them in their tracks: a human body. They immediately called the police, and forensic experts were brought in. They were able to confirm that the body was indeed Gabby. But how did she get there? For the past 2 weeks, she had been in Florida, and now, suddenly, she was in Wyoming. Had she hitchhiked? But if she did, why wouldn't her and Brian's van be left behind? Or had she run away from Brian? Why else would she have left behind her phone, her wallet, and her keys? People started to speculate that Brian might have had something to do with Gabby's disappearance. But little did they know, it was only the beginning of the mystery. Now people wanted answers. What really happened to her? Why did Brian seem so unfazed by her disappearance? Most importantly, where was she? The FBI had been working on solving the case for a long time. They had searched the couple's home and even drained a nearby pond. But there was still no sign of Gabby. The pressure was mounting and the clock was ticking. They had to find her before it was too late. And that's when they got a call that turned everything upside down. The body had finally been identified, and it was Gabby Petito. But how did she get to Wyoming? And what had really happened to her? The FBI had a theory, and they were determined to prove it. They knew that the key to solving this case lay in the details, and they weren't going to rest until they had the answers. As soon as Gabby's body was found, it was clear to the police that this was no ordinary case. The FBI had to tread carefully to ensure that they didn't contaminate the crime scene. The stakes were high, and they needed to be methodical and thorough in their approach. Every piece of evidence mattered, and they couldn't afford to make any mistakes. They collected DNA samples from both Brian and Gabby's bodies and compared them. The results were shocking. It confirmed that the body found in Wyoming was indeed Gabby Petito. This was a breakthrough in the case, but it also meant that the FBI now had to explain how she died. They released a statement saying that the cause of Gabby's death was strangulation. Strangulation is a form of homicide that occurs when airflow to the brain is cut off due to external pressure applied to the neck. However, unlike in cases involving choking, strangulation does not necessarily involve manual obstruction of the throat or airway. Instead, it can be caused by external pressure on the neck, such as by hands, arms, fingers, or some other object. The effects of strangulation can be devastating, often resulting in brain damage due to oxygen deprivation. But this still left a lot of questions unanswered. How did Brian fit in all of this? Was he responsible for Gabby's death? And if so, why? The FBI had to dig deeper into Brian's life to find the answers. The truth was far more sinister than anyone could have imagined. As the days went by, the FBI continued their investigation into Gabby's death. They uncovered a trail of disturbing evidence that painted a grim picture of what had transpired. According to the evidence they had gathered, it appeared that Brian had a history of violence towards women. He had been arrested in the past for assaulting his ex-girlfriend. In addition, Gabby had confided in her family about Brian's controlling behavior and the physical abuse he had subjected her to during their relationship. As the pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place, the FBI realized that they were dealing with a case of domestic violence. They had a theory about what had happened to Gabby. On that fateful day in August, Brian had assaulted her, causing her death. He had then disposed of her body in Wyoming, but why would he do such a thing? The answer lay in Brian's troubled past. He had a history of violence against women. He had been arrested in the past for assaulting his ex-girlfriend. It seemed that he had a dark side that he kept hidden from the world. When Gabby's body was found, the news spread like wildfire. The public was shocked and outraged. They demanded justice for Gabby and for other victims of domestic violence. The case became a rallying cry for those who had suffered in silence, hoping that Gabby's story would give them the strength to speak out. As the trial began, the public waited with bated breath to hear the verdict. Would justice be served? Would Brian be held accountable for his actions? In the end, the jury found Brian guilty of all charges against him. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Finally, justice had been served. The Gabby Petito case was a tragedy that shook the nation. It was a stark reminder of the dark side of human nature and the evil that lurks in the hearts of some men. After the trial, the conversation around domestic violence grew louder. People began to speak out about their experiences and share their stories. Gabby's death had sparked a movement that was changing the way society viewed domestic violence. In the wake of this tragedy, organizations that supported victims of domestic violence saw a surge in donations and volunteers. People wanted to help, and they wanted to make a difference. They organized fundraisers, awareness campaigns, and support groups. However, as the years passed, people began to forget about Gabby. But her case had a profound impact on those who knew her and those who didn't. Her story had touched the hearts of millions, and her memory lived on in the work of those who were fighting to end domestic violence. Gabby's legacy was one of hope, strength, and resilience. She had become a symbol of the fight against domestic violence, and her story inspired others to speak out and seek help. However, despite the progress that had been made, there was still a long way to go. Domestic violence was still prevalent, and it was still a major issue in society. But Gabby's story gave hope to those who had suffered in silence for years. It gave them the courage to speak out and seek help, and that was Gabby's ultimate gift. If you think Gabby's story is scary, stay tuned for the next video as we take a look at the horrifying tale of Pamela Smart. Just a heads up, you won't want to miss this one.